Happy Friday, guys, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Dubs. I'm your host, Bill T. Well, you guys saw what happened last week, and I've been back home for the rest of this week just working on putting some things together and figuring out a time when I'm going to get back there over to my Gia TC and get that bad boy back on the road. But I've got some things in the works, and we'll see how this goes from this point forward. But I'm excited to get that thing back. It was actually a pretty cool cruiser to drive that thing the little bit that I did, but it's got some style and some coolness to it. So I've got some plans for that thing when I get it back. But I'm glad that I was able to connect with my buddy Sam. And this podcast is about Sam Kutz, and he is the owner of NuVintage in Arvada, Colorado. I'm going to tell you something right now. The VW hobby is full of super rad people. And one of those people is Sam. Sam's a listener to the podcast. We messaged back and forth over the past year or so, just little messages here and there, and shared some, experiences about, his growing up in the scene and my growing up, and we're similar in age. And I was fortunate enough to get to meet him face to face when I was up there in Arvada coming through, and he helped me out. You guys saw in the Instagram video that I spent a solid day over there at his place, and we tried to do what we could with that old tired motor, which it didn't last, but the car is still over there, so it's in good hands. I got to get up there and pick it up shortly. This weekend, if you guys are going out there to Bandimere, it's supposed to be the last bug-in, so everybody out there in Denver, man, take lots of pics and post them up and tag your boy Let's Talk Dubs in them, because I'd love to see what's happening over there this weekend for the final bug-in that's going to be at Bandimere Speedway. So yeah, that's what's going on this weekend in Denver. Again, big shout out to everybody over at NuVintage. Sam, Conrad, Rhea, Bill, Charles, just the whole crew over there at NuVintage, man. Totally cool. Dig those people. If you need any VW stuff done, go hit up Sam at NuVintage, man. OG VW guy from way back. And matter of fact, he's going to be on this week's podcast. We did a sit down, talked about him, his hobby, how it evolved into him having the business, his history with fixing cars. He's a sharp cat, knows exactly what's going on. So I'm super stoked. Have him on the podcast this week. Just a genuine, solid VW friend. And, it's one of those people that you meet and you just feel like we're buddies since way back. So he's a rad dude, and hopefully I'll see him down here for one crazy weekend. I just got notification from the hotel that we sold quite a few rooms so far. So you guys are doing the right thing. Get your rooms booked. So make sure you get your rooms booked for one crazy weekend. Go to letstalkdubs.com. Click on the link for one crazy weekend, October 6th and 7th. You will not want to miss that. It's going to be a rager. We've sold double the rooms we sold last year, and it's going to be off the chain, man. Everybody that's coming out, it's just having a blast. It's totally rad. So I'm looking forward to seeing you guys out there. Also, while I was out there in Colorado, I got to meet a listener. Spud came by. Sinister VW, I think is his name. And he stopped by the shop, and just a solid cat, man. Give him a follow on Instagram. He's got a super dope bug on some billets you guys might have saw. And his IG is Sinister VWs too. So check him out. Again, it was just for being there, being stuck with a broke down car, man, it was a great opportunity to just meet some of the people in Denver. And I wish I was there this weekend for the Denver bug-in. But listen, I'm here in Vegas. I got a million things to do, and that's what I'm working on right now. But don't forget, support our sponsors. VW Trends Magazine, a magazine for the people, by the people. Don't forget, go subscribe today at VWTrendsMagazine.com. That's VWTrendsMagazine.com. Also, high performance aftermarket quality parts for your VW by Ross Wolf. Go check them out today. Pick up something cool off their website. They make a lot of rad stuff for your VW to dress it up. Everything from pulleys and dipsticks to billet, shift couplers, and even stainless steel deck hinges for deck lid hinges for your bus. So get yourself dialed in and go check out Ross Wolf at rosswolf.com. So on this week's podcast, Sam Kutz with NuVintage VW Repair Shop and Subaru in Arvada, Colorado. One of the guys that's solid as the day is long and has all kinds of knowledge. He's had cars featured in Hot VWs, and he's got a nice little collection. I checked out at his house. He is committed to the cause. He's into racing. He's into fast cars, and he's into keeping Volkswagens on the road. So make sure you guys go check him out if you're in Arvada, Colorado. But he's, as you'll listen from this podcast, man, OG VW guy from the way back, and it's in his blood. So without any further ado, guys, let's get into this week. Sam Kutz, with NuVintage on Let's Talk Dubs.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen. It's got everything that people who like the bug like.
Okay, everybody. So on today's show, you guys may have noticed on Instagram, if you're following me, that I picked up a bucket of bolts over in Colorado Springs, and a car that hasn't been on the road for quite a while. And I hit the road, and along this journey, I was able to stop and visit a podcast listener and now a friend of mine, Sam Kutz, and he owns a shop here in Arvada, Colorado. We had a little snafu on the road, and one of the great things about the VW hobby is the people, obviously, and with the way that people support each other. So on today's podcast, that's who we're talking to today, Sam Kutz from NuVintage Volkswagen Repair and Subaru, right?
Yes, sir.
Sam, welcome to the podcast.
Glad to be here.
So you're a listener to the podcast, so you kind of know how the routine goes. So
I do.
Go ahead and slide your convertible glass forward to you a little bit. And why don't you tell me, how did you get into Volkswagens and what's your VW story?
I don't remember a time in my life without Volkswagens. Like, everybody in my family had them. My dad, my uncles, my aunts, they all had them. There was countless bugs and buses and a couple of squarebacks that were always around in my childhood.
And you've been into them since high school?
I bought my first bug when I was 12. It was a beat-up 67 that had been sitting in my uncle's driveway on 4 flat tires for forever, and he said he was going to sell it, and I asked how much. He said $50, and I had about $50.
And that's the 67 you own today?
Still have it.
Now, that car, it's been featured in Hot VWs?
It was, yes.
What year? 2017?
March of 17.
And it's a Honda Civic Blue.
Yep, 2000 Civic Si Blue.
Yeah, tell me about the bug.
It's hard to say. I guess it's sort of a California look or a DKP look is what I've been told. Just 2332, the usual big valve heads, IDAs, built transmission, Porsche alloys that I'm glad that I bought 25 years ago when they were cheap.
Yeah, real alloys.
Mm-hmm. Real alloys.
Now, with building that car, being here in Denver, now you've grown up here in Denver.
All my life.
And so what's the scene like here in Denver?
It's different. Not the same as, California or Europe, but a bunch of great people. That's for sure.
I mean, they've got Bandamere, and they have, what's the show called here? It's
the Bug-In.
The Denver Bug-In.
The Denver Bug-In.
And it's usually held at Bandamere. And this year is actually a unique year because this year they're shutting it down, right?
That's the last year for the Bug-In, at least at that location. Bandamere says they're going to have a new location in 2025, and I've talked to John Bandamere III, and he says the Bug-In is his favorite show. So it's going to happen again. Now, you
get your first bug when you're 12 years old. You build it. You do all the stuff. Now, what's the scene like here in Denver at that time?
It was a lot bigger at the time, honestly. The shows were bigger. People used to come here from out of state to race. There were a lot more Volkswagen shops. You used to see them on the road more, but it's shrinking. But like the hardcore people are still here.
Now, you own NuVintage, which you bought. How long ago did you buy the shop?
March of 2011.
And what is your history? How did you get into working on Volkswagens as a profession?
I worked on Subarus since I was about 13. I started at my uncle's shop, and after I left there, I went at several other shops. And then in my mid-20s, I went out on my own, just working on cars out of my garage. And then I got big enough to rent a shop, and I worked by myself about 5 years. And then my shop, I was very good friends with the guy who started it, and we just got to talking one day, and he said he was looking to change and sell his shop, and I was looking to do something different, so we went out to dinner, had a couple drinks, came to an agreement, and I took it over.
Now, how has that been from the standpoint of in a scene here in Denver that is fairly big? I mean, the greater Denver area is, what's the population up here? A couple million?
I believe so. It's huge.
I mean, it's a few million. So the scene here, I mean, listen, just my 2 cents being from Las Vegas, the streets here, they are terrible.
They are horrible.
It's like Salt Lake City. They just keep repaving over stuff. And, the thing you got to worry about in Vegas is like those little drain cutouts that are sticking up above the asphalt. Everything here is below the asphalt because they keep layering it. What's it like buying a shop because you've worked at a few shops here in town?
I did.
What shops have you worked for here?
I was at a place called Strictly Automotive. It's a Subaru shop, and then another 3 or 4 small independent Subaru garages.
Now, but primarily working on Subarus, how do you compare the difference between working on Subarus and Volkswagens?
It's all nuts and bolts, really. It's just, understanding how things work and repairing them.
Yeah. Now, because you own specifically a mostly Volkswagen shop here, you work on a few Subarus come in, but obviously the more people that know you work on Subarus, the more they'll come out here. I'm surprised that I know you guys are working on one Subaru conversion project.
We are.
That would seem like, especially with your background in Subarus, I would think that would be a huge opportunity for you to capitalize on, because there's a lot of people that do it. But most of the shops that I see that do the Subaru conversions, when you're talking I think it's called California Westies and a couple places like
Go
that.
Westie and
Go Westie and California Westie is another one.
Yeah,
and
Van Cafe maybe.
All those Westies, once you put a Subi in them, they're $100,000.
Yes.
So I think what maybe some people don't understand. I remember there used to a website back in the day called Subi Notch, and it was a dude who did his own conversion, late model squareback. I'm sorry, notchback, a late model orange or red notchback. Mm-hmm. And he did it, and he kind of prided himself on the fact that he was able to do it for fairly inexpensive. And anybody can do something fairly inexpensive when you're not calculating what your labor costs are.
That's true.
And everything he was using was, from the junkyard or whatever, or handmade and home built. But I think one of the things, because we talked about it a little bit off the air, I thought, man, with your background and knowing what you know about Subarus, I would think that you could be capitalizing on a market. And I don't know if it's maybe you need to build a few Subi powered cars to sell, or, find that clientele or get people to know that you do the Subi conversions, because having such experience with Subarus, those in and out. And maybe some of the tough time with VW people is they're learning the Subaru thing.
Yes.
And trying to come from a background of knowing Volkswagens, which is two totally different worlds, right?
And we've done a handful of Subaru conversions, but we've done more of is finishing them or fixing them when people do it themselves, and then they bring it to us halfway running or just all assembled and won't work, and we have to diagnose what they didn't get right.
Yeah, and I saw one of the buses you're working on here, and you guys actually had the drive-by-wire throttle pedal in it, which I thought was super cool, because that's one of the things I've seen a lot of unique applications, I put it that way, to be nice.
Yes.
I've seen some junk out there where it's like someone's got all the stuff wadded up under the dash that's got to belong to the Subaru. Now there are people, I understand, that can modify the ECU to basically be a 3-wire hookup. Mm-hmm. But ultimately to do the drive-by-wire and all that stuff and have it be really dialed in, I mean, I'm sure there's a good way to do it. Have you put much thought into maybe trying to specialize in doing any of those Subi conversions? I
would like to. I've bid the job out for a few customers over the years, and it just comes out to more than they want to spend at the time. And you're right, I've thought about doing a couple just on spec to sell. So I've been kind of keeping my eyes out for a clean Vanagon of some sort.
Yeah, especially the Vanagon. It's such a direct swap for the Vanagon.
Yes.
And I would think here in hippie country, you'd be just going over the hills with it. But
they fly up the hills.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I think, a natural progression to do that conversion. I mean, I think really my opinion is a lot of Type 3s just need to do a real Subi swap. Even like my car that I've got out there, the car that we're working on now, the Ghia TC, because the pancake motor in the back, it would be ideal for a Subi conversion. And especially with that little car being kind of sporty as it is, it could be perfect with a Subi setup. So
it'd be a monster.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe one day she'll be back.
I would love to do that. That'd be so much fun.
But now you've got a few cars. I was at your house the other night. You showed me a little bit of your collection, and just let everybody know that the kind of people that are in the VW scene. Sam, only knowing me from Instagram and us exchanging messages back and forth and talking through Instant Messenger, when I show up in town, he kind of rolls out the red carpet for me and makes sure I've got a car to motor around while the Ghia TC is dead over here. So thanks for that, man. I really, it's huge.
That's not a problem.
And it's like a full-on, blown-out Subi wagon that's got all kinds of power that I had to use a lot of restraint when I was driving because I don't want. But she naturally runs. The Subi you got, yes. I mean, she pulls hard. So
it's a monster.
Just driving it, just a little mid-throttle, it starts to open up, and you feel the boost kick in, and it's that's as I'm driving that car. That's my problem as a car guy. I'm driving that car, and I'm thinking, man, maybe I need one of these. I'm not really sure, but. And And I told my wife we were driving, I said, what do you think about one of these?
Right? They're so much fun. And even looking at your TC, I'm thinking, like, I wouldn't mind having that.
It's a full-on sickness.
Yes.
Now, you've been, at your house, I saw a list of awards for the Bug-ins that have happened, like drag racing awards, stuff like that. So how many of the Bug-ins have you been to here? Have you been to the Bug-ins?
I was trying to figure that out. The first year I went with my own car was in 1993.
And since 93, you've been to every Bug-in that they've had here.
And I know my dad, because I wasn't old enough to drive before that, my dad took me up to a few before that. I'm pretty sure.
Now, with those Bug-ins, you've also got a drag bug that you take out there, too.
I do. And my street bug, my blue bug, was my drag bug for many years. And then after I got it painted the last time, I just didn't want to tear the car up, so I put together a different bug for racing.
Now, the 67, you have those featured in Hot VWs. That car, we talked about that. You've got dozens
of trophies from racing that car.
Dozens of trophies, and you've got quite a few quarter-mile passes on that car.
I would hundreds.
And you built that motor when?
1998 originally.
And it's never had the heads off, never had it apart.
It's been freshened up twice, just rings, bearings, and a valve job. But it's all the parts that are in it are what it came with.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
And a friend and I built it back then, and it was the first big motor I ever built.
Just keep going.
Yeah, and I don't drive it nice.
Now, your rag top that you have, that's your drag bug?
It is.
And what's the setup on the drag bug?
It's a 2165, I guess. So it's 78 by 94.
You built the motor on that?
Mm-hmm. It's 44 by 37 CV heads, IDAs, an FK8 cam, and it's all honestly junk I had laying around left over from other parts or swap meets.
An FK8 cam? And that's a small cam.
It is.
It's not like an 89, right?
It's a small cam. It's a great combination, though.
Yeah, that's more like a bottom end cam, right?
And the transmission in it is one I got off Craigslist. It's just a random close ratio gearbox some guy had for a couple $100. The whole car is built from used parts.
No way.
Every single part of it, except the rings and bearings.
And it reminds me a little bit of my drag car, right? I bought it for a low price, and I've taken it out, had a little bit of fun. Broke the transaxle, but hey,
Yeah, been there.
Things happen. So, I think that's pretty rad. So you gonna take the drag bug out to this last Bug-in that's coming up?
And for the last Bug-in, I've rounded up some drivers to get all my cars out there.
Yeah. And besides the Bug-in, what big shows do they have out here?
We've had one called Volkswagens on the Green that's been a huge show since, I want to say, 1994.
Yeah.
And they had to stop because of COVID, and it's going to be back again this year. So.
And when do they have that in the fall?
It's usually in May, usually mid-May.
Now, I was driving around a little bit today, and of course I'm from the hottest part of the universe over there in Las Vegas. And actually Phoenix is hotter, but...
Not much, though.
Yeah, but I'm driving here. It's a little warm today. It's
what, mid-90s today. It's a little hot.
It's got to be mid-90s plus the humidity, and she's cooking a little bit today. So yeah. I always find it interesting because you guys have long winters here.
We do, but they're also mild. We really don't get serious snow until January, February, March. Usually all the way up till Christmas is pretty rare to get much snow.
So you can drive your Volkswagen quite a while here before you got to pack it up. Because I know Salt Lake around October they get the snow, and by then you just start packing things up until about May.
And all the East Coast guys too. They post on Instagram like every October. It's like putting the car away.
Yeah. So you guys, you don't have too much of that over. You got a short winter here.
Yeah, we really do.
That really surprises me because I've always thought I guess up in the mountains, right? You get a lot of snow.
Totally different up there. Here in Denver, it's actually really mild. We have plenty of 50 and 60 degree days in November and December.
Now, how long you bought the shop in 2011? So you've had it
12 years now.
12 years. How have you liked having your own shop?
Oh boy, it's fun at the end of the day, but it's also tough. It used to be I was just responsible for me, and now
you used to just look at the flag time and bust it out and make 60 hours of work in a 40-hour work week, and
exactly. And then when I worked for myself, if I got done with my job for the day, I'd go home.
Right, and now it's kind of like you've got the rent, the bills, the insurance, all the stuff that you never thought. So making that transition, it's kind of been eye-opening because there's a lot of guys out there that work for a shop and think, I'm going to go start my own place. And it's not really as easy as you think it would be.
Not at all.
And then you really, when you start opening up a business, then you realize how heavy-handed the government is with you, right? With
that was a surprise.
With all the regulations and all, like, we got to come in. Do you do any welding in here? Because if you do welding, we're going to have to see a welding space and some fire blankets and blah blah blah. Just like, It never ends. I mean,
Yes.
I know in Nevada they have, since you're going to be handling oil, they've got they charge you an oil fee.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's nothing. It's for nothing other than for them to give you a certificate that says we've checked your place and you told us you know how to work with oil.
Yep. But if you're doing AC, if you're doing tires, there's so many.
Yeah, there's a lot of government bureaucracy that's involved in it that sometimes you don't see as an employee for a shop.
Yes.
Now, coming here in the shop, have you changed what the shop has done? Is there things that you prefer to do, that you like to do, things that you don't do?
The only thing we don't really do here is body and paint.
So you guys do everything. Someone wants a car built and it's painted, and they want somebody to put it together. Are you?
Oh, we'd love to do that. And I have 2 different painters that I work with.
Yeah.
One's a super high-end guy that does amazing work, and there's another guy who does really great work for what he charges. And I will see if either one of those guys is willing to work with my customers to fit their budget, and we'll take the cars apart and give them the bodies and pick them back up when it's done and put it back together.
Yeah, and I mean, for restoration in Denver, I would think it's like every other city. There's not a lot of people offering that to be able to do that for you.
At least not for Volkswagens. There's quite a few muscle car high-end places that do it, but they don't do Volkswagens right. I hate to say it, but when we see a Volkswagen that's been restored by one of the hot rod shops, it's just not right.
Yeah, they use whatever's the first thing pops up on Amazon or whatever. And it's like, it makes VW people crazy.
Yes, it does.
And then they probably throw in some extra VW logos on the headrests and on the seats and door panels and stuff like that, so people make sure that they know it's a Volkswagen.
Of course.
Now,
and funny wheels. Muscle car shops put the weirdest wheels on bugs.
Yeah. Now, as you've transitioned and doing like full-time VW stuff, what are one of the things that surprised you really when it came to working on VWs that are maybe if somebody, someone just messaged me the other day and said, I'd like to get back in the VW scene and I don't know kind of what to look for, what I should be checking out. So I thought this might be a perfect opportunity for me to ask you, if you're talking to a guy who comes to see you and says, Sam, I'm looking to get a VW, I'm going to go buy a Volkswagen. What should I look at before I buy it? What are maybe the top 5 things I should look at?
Like anything else, the biggest thing is rust.
Yeah.
You got to watch out for a car that's got rust and body filler, any evidence of that. And if you're looking to restore a car, buy an original paint car because it's honest. It's not hiding anything,
Yeah.
We've seen so many people buy a car off eBay or wherever and bring it here, and it's just a horrible, horrible car.
Yeah. eBay's a tough deal. Everybody I know that's bought a car from eBay has been surprised.
Yeah. It's just a bad, bad restoration.
Now, drivetrain wise, what would you have them check?
Usual stuff. Look for oil leaks. That's a big one. Basically that's oil leaks are the big one. Make sure it runs smoothly. If it doesn't run good or sounds funny, there's something wrong.
What's your take? Because my take on some of the things is try to buy the best one you can afford.
Yes.
That's got the most, because the problem is like if you look to buy one and you're going to spend, because some people are like, oh, look, I can get one for $1,200. I can get one for $1,500. If you buy one on the lower end, you're just going to have to put all the money in on the back end. And the best way to buy them, against my own personal advice when I buy these oddball things like the old TC out here.
Me too.
Is if you buy them as close to finished or a finished car, you're buying them for, 75 cents on the dollar, paying a lot. Usually you're paying 50 cents on the dollar typically for what it costs to build.
Easily, and the same line of thought, whenever I've had customers that want to restore a car fully, I always try and tell them, like, you're going to have way more in this car than you can possibly sell it for.
Right.
So just be aware.
Yeah. And with a lot of people that are kind of in our age bracket, we're all getting to that age where you're in your 40s and 50s when people have the most disposable income. And so people that's why you see buses starting to spike and bugs and all that stuff starting to spike in value. I mean, even IROCs are worth a good amount of money today.
It's crazy. Yes.
Yeah. Those were the cars back in the day. So yeah, the demographic has a tendency to push the hobby, but I think, here in Denver, we talked about rust on cars over here because I saw this orange. I kind of made a joke about the orange bus out there, like, yes. Oh, is that one of these rust free? Because it's got a lot of surface rust on it, but it's not rot to the core, right?
Right, and it's original paint bus, which I like.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me because I'm thinking in my head, I'm thinking, yeah, if it's from Denver, it's probably rotten. But you're saying Denver.
It's actually a pretty dry climate most of the time. It's been rainier than usual here, so it feels humid. But I mean, I've pulled plenty of cars out of fields here that are not rusty.
Really? Mm-hmm. Wow. And have you, because you've owned a shop, how has that affected your participation in car shows and club hangouts and stuff like that? Has it made that a little more difficult?
Yeah, honestly, it's really tough because, I'm with Bugs all the time, working on Volkswagens all the time, and then in my free time at home, I'm trying to keep my own cars on the road or build my own cars. So, yeah, when it comes time to go to a show, I don't usually have that much interest in it.
Yeah.
But I love seeing the cars and talking to the people there. So
right.
I tend to show up around 10 or 11, hang out for an hour or two, and go home.
Yeah, it's interesting to take something that's a hobby and a passion that you're in love with and then turn it into a career, because then after a while it starts to get where I did that with car audio when I was younger. We talked about car audio for me. I said, I thought that'd be really cool. And when I was younger, I started doing car audio, and then I really kind of got burnt out a little bit on it because of what I was doing was so mundane. And then I wasn't like, if I was doing crazy custom stuff, I'd find it exciting. But just when I'm just doing deck and tune and an alarm and all that stuff all day, it gets kind of boring. And you almost lose a little bit of interest in it. But I was young enough to keep the fire, but it did get a little bit annoying when it was my job too.
Yes.
So that's got to be a tough thing to balance, because the craziest part is, and that's why I encourage a lot of guys that have shops, just come to my event at one crazy weekend. I don't want you to set up a booth. I don't want you to do anything. I want you to bring a car, and I want you to hang out. And it's kind of one of the basis of the way I've set up my show, is that it's really an active enthusiast participant event. It's got those strip crews, it's got the poker run, there's the obligatory car show on Saturday morning,
of course,
which lets everybody have their car on display. Mm-hmm. They could stay up late, park your car where it's in their parking spot the next day, and parking the show's over about 1:00, and then you just go hang out, meander about for a few hours until the poker run starts. And the poker run, it's just more of a interactive event, which I've always found more fun. It's always about the journey. Like even right now where I'm here,
It sounds like a lot of fun, and the secure parking for your car really appeals to me.
Yeah, no, that's a big thing for us. We have 24-hour security that's there. And it's also Vegas, so we don't have as much of that problem, knock on wood, in Vegas that we would, that you would in Southern California or stuff like that, because the market, it's a little bit like Denver, right? It's not the most overtaking thing here, because I would guess if you probably put the lowrider market up against the VW market here, the lowrider market's probably a little bit bigger. Or the hot rod market's 10 times bigger.
And the import market here is huge too.
Well, and I was thinking about that as I was driving around your Subi today. I thought to myself, I bet Subis here. All I did all day was see Subis.
They're huge here.
And a couple of them revved me, and I had to use restraint, and I said, I'm not going to run this dude down.
I wouldn't have been upset if you did.
But I could tell that those are probably popular here because of the all-wheel drive.
Right.
And
they're great snow cars.
It's like perfect for doing snow. And you got Pikes Peak not far from here. Mm-hmm. Have you ever been to Pikes Peak?
I have.
Have you ever driven a car at Pikes Peak?
No, I haven't. I'd like to.
Now, do they have it? Are you able to drive up Pikes Peak without, like, when there's not a race, something like that going on?
Yeah, as far as I know, you can drive all the way to the top.
So is it just a big gravel road that goes all the way to the top, or is it paved now?
All the way to the top, which I guess made some of the racers in the Pikes Peak hill climb angry because they enjoyed the gravel. The first half was paved, and the second half was gravel, as I understand it, and they paved it a couple years ago.
So the whole thing's paved?
Yes.
Yeah, and that goes up how high?
Oh my gosh, it's like 14,000 feet or something ridiculous.
It climbs to 14,000.
I believe so.
So it's a 9,000 foot climb in how short a distance? A couple
of miles.
Wow.
And I know quite a few friends that have driven their bugs up there.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, I hope you got fuel injection and a turbocharge.
Right.
Because, that's going to be, I would think it's tough enough to get stuff to run right here. And then if they're going to drive, like if someone's going to drive a Volkswagen here, and you tune it for Denver, and they're driving down to Southern California, that's a lot of altitude adjustment.
Yes, it is.
Which is why Volkswagen from the factory kind of did a general...
Just a basic adjustment.
Just a basic adjustment, which is why you sit behind one in the line, it just all you can smell is fuel, because they're all going to run a little fat so that they can get through the different elevations. So it should be interesting. It would be interesting to see how the Gia runs when I get out of this elevation and down a lower elevation, like down in Utah and stuff like that. So
once you get over the mountains, you'll be doing just fine, I think.
Now, how many mountains are from here to there? From here to Utah?
Quite a few. I mean, you're going to go over the Rockies, over the Continental Divide, and then back down the other side. And once you get past like Glenwood Springs into the Grand Junction Palisade area, it's pretty smooth.
So And that's the only way to Vegas from here. I mean, short of going up to Salt Lake.
Yeah, and there's other ways you can go. There's a way you can go south, past Colorado Springs, and I think you end up through Arizona a little ways.
Oh yeah, yeah, I saw that way.
Those are smaller 2-lane roads where I wouldn't want to drive a car that's questionable.
Right, because you got oncoming traffic.
Right.
Just you in a yellow line.
And if you might not have cell service if it breaks down, you might not. It seems like a bad idea.
Yeah, no, that's a wild. Now, have you ever driven your Volkswagen from here to California?
I've not. That's a dream I've had for years.
Though, and with you guys having the Continental Divide and all that stuff, that's a pretty big thing to go through from here to there. I mean,
it is.
One of the things that keeps me from driving my Volkswagen to the shows at summertime in Southern California is Baker Grade.
Oh my gosh!
It's because it's a monster grade in the middle of Death Valley, so it's like the hottest part and the steepest climb. So. Yeah, I'm starting to get a little nervous about thinking about this.
You'll be fine. It's not that hot. Our mountains are cold.
Yeah, so they're nice and cool.
You'll drop 20 or 30 degrees by the time you get to the top of the mountains here.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just the incline, huh?
Yeah.
So just take it easy, just third gear the thing and just cruise the thing.
Third gear in the slow lane all the way till you get to basically past Eisenhower Tunnel, and you'll be fine.
I don't know if I've ever been this way. We're going to find out.
It'll be an adventure.
Yeah, well, listen, that's really the whole purpose of all this is just to do an adventure, just to have something fun to do, because sometimes we look at life and we think we're not getting any younger, and we don't want to save all our good days for when we're old and we can't use up those good days. You know what I mean?
You're inspiring me to want to get out there and
I'm
take
telling
a road trip
you,
in a bug.
I tell everybody, even if you go do it one time, you'll look back and you'll say it was the most childish, immature, stupid thing I ever did that made no sense, but I had a good time.
And I've got fond memories of road trips in my dad's 74 bus. He owned that bus for like 30 years, and we took it all over.
So your dad originally had a Volkswagen. So you come from a Volkswagen family.
Ish. It's funny. Like my uncles loved Volkswagens. They lived for them. But my dad had a love-hate relationship with them. So
that's interesting.
He was more into British cars.
Was he?
Things, yes.
Now, what drew you to Volkswagens other than just your first one that you got? I mean, did you see magazines, Hot VWs, any of that kind of stuff when you were younger?
I don't even remember. I just remember they were always there in my life. I don't remember not having Volkswagens around that I rode in, bugs and buses, and then just talking to my uncle one day, and he said he was going to sell the old blue bug, and my cousins and I used to play in it in his driveway because it just sat there dead for years, and I bought it. My dad and I aired up the tires, put a battery in it, and we drove it home.
Now, any bugs that you recall, or Volkswagens in general, you recall in the magazines over the years that you've seen that, like, if there was one car, one of my favorites was this one or that one. Anything that comes to mind?
Yes, the tan, Savannah Beige 67 that was built by Ivan McCutcheon from Volksworld.
Oh, really? I know the guy that owns that car.
Yeah, Jim Dix.
Yeah, Jim Dix owns that car.
That is my favorite car of all time. Like, I saw it at the European Bug-In last summer, and I had goosebumps.
Yeah, I had a Savannah Beige 67. I'll end the story there.
Mm-hmm.
But right. I had a Savannah Beige 67 that's owned by Elliott Vansel now. Oh. So it's in Texas. So I told him, that bug goes nowhere but back to me if it's got to leave the collection. So
totally. That car.
Yeah, 67 Savannah Beige. So I may have told a story one time before on the podcast, but I had picked up from a guy that worked at a VW shop in Vegas. And this is the kind of guy, and I'm sure there's one here in this town, that he's a good mechanic, but he's a pack rat, saves everything that comes off the car. He owns an old school bus full of parts, and he's got a collection of all kinds of stuff. Never really drives anything, but he has these things. And my buddy's name's Carl, and he had a double cab, and he had taken this double cab, and it was all in primer. He wanted $5,000 for it. So I gave him, and this is probably going to be 2005. So I buy this double cab. It's primered, and I'm like, ugh, this thing's a ton of work. And so I happen to be at the VW Classic. Now, they had started putting bullets on it, making it look early. So it was a 62. They tried to make it look earlier.
Okay.
A bunch of the work was done, but it's primered. It's just a shell. And I happen to be at the Classic, and I see a Savannah Beige 67 bug. It's on 5-lug Sprint Stars. It's got red interior, and it's just a TMI kit. And I'm looking at that car, and it's a complete. It's like a quick restoration, but decent. And I thought, I went up to the guy. I can't remember what he wanted for the car, $10,000 or $12,000. I can't remember. And I went up to him. I said, "You want to trade this for a double cab?" And the guy's eyes, like, even then, he was like, Well, yeah. I mean, I'd be interested in I said, I just didn't want to do a straight trade. So this Bug that I picked up from him, it had a 1200 in it. So 1600, it was supposed to have a 1600, but it had a 1200 in it. And the trans was, so we met in the middle, met like in Bakersfield, switched cars. And then I drove back. And the only other thing I think is, I don't know if he had a title with it. I can't remember if he had a title with it or not, but I had to get a title for the car. And in hindsight, like that car, all I ever did that car was drivetrain stuff. All I did was suspension, engine trans, the interior, everything I left completely alone. And it was such a good looking car. I changed it from the wide 5 Sprint Stars, changed to Fuchs on there. And it was just like, and I never really had a car that of color stood out to me. Mm-hmm. But something about the Savannah Beige 67s are a good color. The baby blue they have is also a really cool color. Yep. But the Savannah Beige is more my liking. So
that's a good car.
Yeah, and what's interesting is when I first went to Volksworld, that's who I was hanging out with was Ivan. Yeah. So I went to Volksworld, met up with Ivan. My wife and I were there. We hung out with him and his girlfriend, and we just kind of did the tour. Went out to dinner, checked everything out. I mean, he gave me a banner from the first time Volksworld was on display at a magazine meet, wow. And it's issue 1, and it's like an 8-foot tall banner. And so he's like, here, we talked about European people. He's trying to give me things like, here, take this, here, right. take this. And I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to take this home. So he's like, just fold it up. So I fold up this banner. It's like an 8-foot by 6-foot banner. I finally get it. I get it home. And the whole thing, and Ivan's a bit of a smoker. So the whole thing smelled like a burned cigarette the whole time. But yeah, he gave me that. I've got an issue 1 of Volksworld still in the cellophane.
Wow.
And, yeah, he gave me some pretty cool stuff. I haven't seen Ivan in a while, and I've been hoping to be able to one day track him down and get him on the podcast. But hopefully he's doing better.
Yeah.
But yeah, 67 Savannah Beige that's the problem. There's so many cars that look good.
Yeah.
And it's just like there's a lot. I mean, I like your 67. That's a good looking car. That Honda Civic SI Blue, is that what it is?
Yeah. It was originally L633 VW blue, which is just kind of a plain dark blue, which I painted that color once, and then I was going to repaint it, and a buddy of mine owns a body shop, and this was in 2000 when those Hondas were brand new. He told me he had a better color for me. I was like, whatever, and he came by with a chunk of a crashed Honda and handed it to me. It had been at his shop.
Yeah.
In that blue, and yeah.
Yeah, that's a great color. It's a good looking car. Now, give me a rundown for anybody listen about NuVintage, like what you guys do over here. Kind of give me give me your 30-second pitch on whatever you guys do here.
We do everything here. We usually have 3 or 4 full restorations in progress. One's being disassembled, one's at paint, and one's being reassembled, and one's just being tidied up and ready to deliver. We have plenty of bugs to work on that are people's daily transportation, so we try and get them in and out pretty quick here. And the only thing we really don't do in-house is body and paint.
Now, you guys build engines here?
We do.
And transmissions, I'm assuming you guys install new transmissions, you farm them out?
I have a couple different people I farm them out to, but we build engines, mostly stock stuff, but I will build big engines if people want.
And, I mean, but when it comes to tuning stuff, you can tune everything, do whatever. Yeah. I mean, somebody's buying a bug and they just got it and it's all out of whack, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You're the shop to bring it to.
Tune single carb, dual carbs. I've gotten really adept at stock fuel injection over the last few years, too.
Oh, really? So the factory Bosch injection?
Yep, for the bugs and buses and Type 3s. I've taken myself to school on that stuff.
Yeah, it takes a special kind of understanding, but the way it's been explained to me is like once you understand it, it's pretty simple. Right.
But they take virtually no feedback from the engine. It's just a computer that operates within a set of parameters. So if it's not working right, there's something wrong. There's a vacuum leak or things like that. Once you understand how it works, it's actually very simple. Because
it's all just mechanical. Mm-hmm. It's a mechanical fuel injection.
Yeah, it's barely a computer.
Yeah, no, I think it's, and that's the thing that as we see the hobby start to change a little bit, I see a lot of people with late model Type 3s like, don't throw away the EFI, use it, fix it, use it. Would you recommend if somebody bought a EFI Type 3 and it's not running, what would you recommend?
We'll get somebody to fix the fuel injection.
Because if it's fuel injected, how do they? So you've driven a nice tuned EFI VW?
They run great, yes. Bugs, buses, and Type 3s.
And do they adjust for elevation?
Not really.
So they just kind of keep it. They're just looking at just some basic parameters on the motor, and they keep it running within a window.
So we can tune it for elevation. There's not a lot of adjustment to it, but there's a little adjustment.
Yeah. And then automatic trannies you familiar with?
A bit. We've worked on some automatic buses and Type 3s, and they're fun.
Yeah. And they take much external adjustment on those?
No, the real only, and some of them have an adjustable kickdown or a vacuum modulator. That's about it.
Now, what about auto sticks?
I love auto sticks.
Yeah.
They're so much fun to drive.
I mean, if you look at the technology behind the auto stick, they were way ahead of their time.
Yeah, it's a shame they didn't catch on.
I mean, the clutch you can get as soon as you put your hand on the shift lever, it engages the clutch.
I've had so many people that have bought auto sticks, and I had to teach them how to drive the car.
Yeah. Because they like to rest their hand on the shifter?
Yes.
Every time I'm driving, the thing just won't go into gear.
Yeah, I'm driving, and it keeps bucking and popping out of gear like, you're touching the shifter again. You're touching the shifter again.
Yeah, but some people just don't realize that it's kind of a habit. It's like when you watch people drive, and I'm a big proponent in, like, I'm sitting at a light, I'm not on the clutch. I don't touch the clutch until, like, it's just one of those things that bugs me, because I've changed the clutch so many times. I look at that throw-up bearing, and I'm thinking, like, just sitting there holding the clutch in makes me crazy, because it's like a momentary design not to sit there and...
Right, or having a bug with like a stage 2 Kennedy in it. You don't want to sit at a stoplight.
Yeah, no, it's definitely one of those things where over time you start to figure out what you like and what you don't like when it comes to driving, but also the things that you do that make the car last longer.
Right.
I mean, it's tough in my bus sometimes. I catch myself resting my foot on the clutch pedal, and it's like you got to be conscious to take it off, because it just becomes this second nature thing. But interestingly, those are all of the things. People's idiosyncrasies are a lot of the reasons that we see a lot of the failures with Volkswagens, and then people can't realize why they're falling apart. Or, one of my favorite things when I buy Volkswagen is like, the transmission's broke and it's the shift coupler.
Right. Or the brake drum has been spun.
Right. Yeah. The transmission, and I've bought a few Volkswagens that way, where they've parked them for years and years and years, and just kind of got to the point where maybe they just got it back from the shop and the shift coupler broke, and they just said bag the whole thing.
Done with it.
Yeah. It's interesting. A lot of fines out here. I mean, now that you're a shop, you get people stopping in all the time trying to sell you stuff, obviously, and you got more parts than you can shake a stick at.
Things do come my way more than they used to, but I've also always been the guy that if I see a bug in a driveway or in front of your house, I'll knock on the door, and and my friends know I'm that guy, so they'll tell me, like, hey, I saw a bus in this driveway. Here's a picture of it. And
yeah.
I've bought a lot of them that way.
Well, I have people do that to me all the time. Hey, I saw this Volkswagen. You know this? I mean, usually it's like, do you know this guy? I'm like, yeah, I know that guy. Mm-hmm. So with all the cars that you have, because you've got your convertible, your 67 convertible, you got your 67 Beetle, you got your Acapulco thing.
And the ragtop bug.
And you got the ragtop bug. Those are your Volkswagens that you got on top of we talked Mustangs for a few minutes off the air.
Yeah.
But you've got a really fast, what year is your Mustang?
It was a 2012.
So, and that thing, you said it's 11 seconds?
Yeah, it runs low 11s.
Is it automatic or stick?
It's automatic.
That's even crazier.
My daily driver when the weather's nice.
Yeah, automatic and 11 seconds and air conditioning. And
it's great.
Yeah, listen, Volkswagen has technology. It's just it will cost you the same to buy the Mustangs that would to build a VW that would be that way.
It would cost a lot more to build a VW that would run that way.
Well, I'm thinking if you we're not 11s is a tall order, but if you actually took a late model bus automatic trans, you put it into a Type 3, you Subi powered the thing, you put air conditioning in it,
you could do it.
You could make a drivable Volkswagen, and it'd probably cost you $50,000 to build that car
easily, but it'd be very fun.
Hey, I mean, listen, it can be done. Your dreams can be realized, and NuVintage is the place to take it there to get that stuff done. So you do any type of work that anybody needs, and you do it on both Volkswagens and Subarus.
We do.
So if people are looking to do Subaru stuff, you do that as well.
Mm-hmm. Do wiring harnesses. I do a lot of wiring harnesses for people.
Really? Mm-hmm. Wiring harnesses just for the Subaru specifically, or for conversions?
For bugs in general. Like I do a lot of rewiring of Volkswagens.
Oh yeah.
Do a ton of those.
As we saw with Witness of the Gia over here, there's people like to fiddle with the wiring. So
yes, and I've built Subaru wiring harnesses for conversions before.
Yeah, have you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
it's pretty straightforward.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one of those things when you see that big ECU and you're just looking at it thinking like, I don't even know where.
A lot of wires there.
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff. Well, man, anything else you wanted to chat about before we wrap it up?
No, it's just been a lot of fun.
No, I think you're a perfect testament of what it is for the VW hobby. We know each other through Instagram and through some stuff like that, but for me to be able to show up at your shop and for you to be able to make time to help me get some of this stuff going, it's been completely awesome. I felt the hospitality, but you know, that's kind of the VW thing. You know, it's kind of like,
that's the hobby.
yeah, that's one of the things, because I've been, like I said, I've said it thousands of podcasts. I've been in a bunch of different car genres, but the VW people happen to be the most genuine people, and they're all for, you know, like the hobby.
They are, you know, like I have a Mustang and I have a Camaro, and I've been into the Mustang scene and the Camaro scene and the import scene. My Subaru, just dabbled in them, and I didn't like the people very much.
They're just different, right?
Yes, they are.
It's because I think, and I think the biggest difference is, if you're a VW enthusiast, you have to pay the price to be in the hobby. Like, your car is going, you know, like I say all the time, it's baptism by fire. Like, you're getting it one way or another.
It's going to break.
Yeah, it's going to break down on you when you least expect it, and you have to have that commitment to cool. The commitment to drive a Volkswagen is a price to be paid. But I think that's kind of the brotherhood of it, right? Like, you know what that guy's been through. So
the people that don't, the ones, you know, they have a bug for like one season and get rid of it. It's just not for them when they get into something else.
Yeah, no, I think it's one of the things. One of my favorite things about the hobby is the people. I mean, we had people stop by. We had a guy stop by today who's a listener to the podcast, and you know, it's one of those things where, you know, part of this hobby is just connecting with people and sharing the experiences, the stories, and all that fun stuff. So
it's great. You can go to any show in any part of the world, and you've automatically got friends.
Oh yeah, especially when you go to Europe, man. Yeah. When you go to Europe and they find out you're from the States, they're like, "Oh, you're from the States, really?"
It was great. I had such a good time last summer. I met so many cool people out there, and like, I'm Instagram friends with a bunch of people I met there.
Yeah, if you get a chance, life is too short not to go to Europe, man. It's too short, and it's easy to get a passport. You might as well fly over there, especially after all this COVID nonsense and all that stuff. Hop a plane, go there, check it out, and my wife doesn't argue with me going to Europe. She has no problem with that. She's like,
so much good food. Oof.
Yeah, we get to go. We get to do a bunch of other stuff, sightseeing and all that stuff, and then we end up going to a VW show. So
exactly, that's what we did too. We did some sightseeing for a couple of days. Went to the show, did more sightseeing.
Yeah,
went home.
No, that's rad. Well, brother, I can't thank you enough, man, for what you've done to help me out, and
it's been my pleasure.
For sure. We'll be in touch again. Hopefully, I'll see you at the One Crazy Weekend, man. Maybe
see if I can swing it. I'd love that.
Maybe you get a chance to come down.
It'd be great.
All right, brother. Thanks.
Thank you.
If you like that podcast, and I'm sure you did, make sure you copy and paste this podcast on your Facebook, on your Instagram, or however you can to share it with those that would appreciate a good VW podcast. I appreciate all the growth that we've seen from our listeners digging in. And if you haven't shared it yet, please do me a personal favor and share it. Matter of fact, if you share it, tag me when you share it. I appreciate all those that help Let's Talk Dubs grow. Look, one day, this might be a full-time gig for me, which would be super rad, and I could buy cars all over the country and just drive around and give stuff away. But listen, we're not there yet, but one day maybe. So if you want to support the podcast, make sure you go to letstalkdubs.com, click on the merch tab, buy some merch, and support the podcast. If you want a shout out on the podcast, buy some merch, or give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or any of your listening devices that you listen to us, any of the platforms that you download your podcast from. So appreciate all you guys. Got lots more podcasts coming up. Super stoked to do it and deliver it for you guys. And don't forget, man, no matter what happens, keep smiling, keep driving your VW. And until next week, later.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen.